I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. We met in college, hit it off pretty fast, and everything seemed normal until recently. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but the last few months, something changed. I started noticing little things. She'd be more secretive about her phone, always keeping it face down, even when she was just sitting there. She'd leave her laptop open when she wasn't looking, and I'd catch her deleting stuff or hiding tabs. Nothing overt, but enough to make me suspicious. We're both in recovery, me from alcohol, her from drugs. We met through a support group and leaned on each other a lot. That's why I trusted her completely. When she insisted I take the 5-year sobriety chip at our local community center, I was proud. It was a big milestone, and I wanted her there. That day was supposed to be about celebrating my journey, our journey. But I remember feeling a strange sense of unease that morning, like something was off. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came a few days after the celebration. I kept noticing her acting nervous around me, jittery even. She'd avoid eye contact, and when I asked how she was, she'd brush it off with a bitchy comment or a joke. She'd say I was overthinking, that I was paranoid because I was sober now. But I wasn't paranoid. I knew something was wrong. The biggest hint was when I found her phone in her purse, and there was this message from a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "Can't wait to see you again tonight." I froze. My stomach dropped. I looked through her messages, and there it was. A whole conversation with some guy named Mark, her recovery sponsor from her support group. They'd been texting a lot more than just about sobriety. Flirty stuff, suggestive, even explicitly talking about meeting up. I couldn't believe it. My wife, who insisted that she was understanding my journey, was apparently cheating on me with her sponsor. That's when I knew for sure. The betrayal cut deep. I'd trusted her, loved her, fought for this marriage. And she was out there sneaking behind my back, lying and cheating while I was trying to get better myself. I confronted her that night. I couldn't keep it in. I showed her the messages, everything. Her face twisted into this bitchy, defensive sneer. She told me I was reading too much into it, that Mark was just a good friend, and that I was jealous and insecure. She even lied about what they'd talked about, saying it was all about her sobriety and nothing more. But I knew better. I was livid. I felt betrayed, not just because she cheated, but because she lied about it so brazenly. How could she do that? After everything we'd been through, she'd just throw it all away for some meaningless sex with her sponsor. I'd never felt so stupid, so angry, so hurt. That night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her lies, the way she looked at me like I was crazy for doubting her. I felt this terrible mix of heartbreak and rage, that she'd lie to my face, that she'd gamble with our marriage like it meant nothing. I was hurt, but I was also furious. How could she do this? The one person I trusted most in the world. It's like she was just waiting for the right moment to stab me in the back. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her admit what she'd done, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. The truth was out, and I was left standing there feeling like a fool. Now I'm trying to figure out what comes next. Do I forgive her? Do I leave? Part of me still loves her. Part of me wants to believe she'll change, that maybe it was just a moment of weakness. But deep down, I know this isn't something you come back from easily. Every time I see her, I see the betrayal etched into her face, and I wonder how much of her lies are still hiding behind that bitchy attitude. I don't know how I'm supposed to move forward, but I do know this. I won't let her get away with it. Not without a fight. After that night, everything felt different. My mind was racing, trying to process what I just uncovered, but the truth was, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started paying closer attention, not just to her words, but to everything about her behavior. The way she avoided my eyes, the excuses she'd throw out when I'd catch her in a tiny lie. It was obvious she had been hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went, how long she'd been doing it, and what her real reasons were. I decided to dig a little deeper. I went through her phone again, this time more carefully. I looked at her recent calls, her texts, her social media. Nothing jumped out at first, but I noticed she'd deleted a lot of recent messages. Every time I'd ask her about something suspicious, she'd give me that condescending, bitchy smile and say I was overreacting, that I was trusting too much. But I wasn't just trusting, I was trying to be supportive. And she was throwing all that support back in my face with her lies and cheating. One day, I decided to set a little trap. I left my phone on the kitchen table, purposely leaving it unlocked. I wanted to see if she'd behave differently if she thought I wasn't paying attention. Sure enough, that night, I caught her sneaking into the storage closet at the community center where I'd been receiving my sobriety chip, something I'd told no one about. She slipped in with Mark, the sponsor, and I saw her through the crack in the door. They were there for a long time, whispering and then disappearing behind some shelves. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I knew then that the cheating was more than just a flirtation, it was physical. They'd been screwing around in that storage room behind everyone's back while I was celebrating a huge milestone. I was furious. I wanted to confront her right then, but I held back. Instead, I watched her come out, acting innocent, like she hadn't just been caught red-handed. The burning rage inside me was uncontrollable, but I knew I had to gather my thoughts. I needed a plan, a way to get answers and honestly to make her pay for what she'd done. I kept quiet for a few days, pretending like everything was fine, but inside I was boiling. I wanted her to admit everything, but I knew she'd lie her way out of it if I let her. That's when I decided I'd have to do something more calculated. I started talking to some of the support group members she'd been close to. I asked subtle questions, watched how they reacted, and listened carefully. Some of them had noticed her and Mark's strange behavior, how they'd disappear together, how she'd act differently around him, more bitchy and defensive. It was obvious she'd been trying to hide her affair, but the signs were everywhere. I was gathering enough info to make her feel cornered, to force her into a confession. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some naive husband. I was serious, I was furious, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Meanwhile, the emotional toll was taking a toll on me. I felt betrayed not just by her, but by everyone I thought I could trust. Our marriage, which I'd fought so hard to preserve, was unraveling before my eyes. Every day brought new hints, new lies, new reasons to question everything. I'd lie awake at night, replaying the scene in the storage room, imagining her lying there with Mark, and I'd feel this crushing sense of loss. I'd loved her so much, and now that love was turning into pure anger and disappointment. I kept asking myself how she could do this, how she could betray me so completely after everything we'd been through, after she claimed she was understanding my journey. That phrase now sounded like a sick joke. As the days went on, I saw her trying to act normal, trying to pretend everything was fine. But I knew better. I saw the cracks, how she'd dodge questions, how she'd get defensive when I pressed her. It was clear she was hiding something, and that something was her affair. I didn't want to just walk away or call it quits, not yet. I wanted her to know I wasn't going to be made a fool of. I was going to get the truth out of her, one way or another. And I was already planning how I'd do it, because at this point, I didn't trust her for a second. She lied to me for too long, and I was done being played. I had to decide whether I could forgive her or if I was better off walking away. That's a decision I wasn't ready to make just yet, but I knew one thing: everything was about to change. Over the next few days, I kept my cool on the surface, but inside I was boiling. Every little thing she did, every sneaky glance or quick lie confirmed what I'd already suspected. This wasn't just a fling. It was something more serious. I felt like I was walking around with a ticking time bomb inside me, waiting to explode. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. All I kept thinking about was that storage room, her betrayal, how she'd lied so effortlessly. I was furious at her, but I was also hurt, betrayed by the woman I'd loved and trusted for so long. One night, I decided I'd had enough of playing nice. I was going to catch her in the act again, or at the very least, force her into a corner where she'd have to tell me the truth. I set up a hidden camera in the storage closet at the community center. I wanted irrefutable evidence. I left it there, knowing she'd go back. That night, I waited in the dark, heart pounding, stomach clenched tight. I'd never felt so anxious and so determined. Around midnight, I saw her slip away from the house quietly. She thought no one was watching. I followed her at a distance, my pulse pounding in my ears. She went straight to the community center, slipped into the storage room, and stayed there for close to an hour. I watched through the camera footage, my stomach sinking with each second. And then I saw her unmistakably with Mark. They weren't just talking, they were fooling around, kissing, touching. She was giving him what I'd always believed she was capable of, something dirty, something she'd lied about. I saw her hands on him, her kissing him in a way that made me feel sick and furious all at once. That was the moment I knew I had to confront her, no matter what. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see this. But I also realized I couldn't just burst in there and accuse her blindly. I needed to be smart. I needed to get her to admit it on her own, or at least get her to slip up and tell me the truth. So I waited until the next day when she'd be back home, and I planned my confrontation. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I was going to make her see that I had evidence, that I knew exactly what she'd been doing behind my back. When she walked into the house that afternoon, I was waiting. I could see the defensive glare in her eyes. She knew I'd caught her, or at least suspected she'd been lying. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Lisa, I saw the footage. I know what you've been doing. You've been cheating on me in the storage room, haven't you?" Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back with her usual bitchy attitude. "What are you talking about? You're crazy. You're just paranoid because you're sober now. Don't start accusing me of stuff I didn't do." I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone and played the clip right in front of her. Her eyes widened, then she started to spin her usual lies. "That's not what it looks like," she spat, her voice trembling slightly. "You're just jealous. Mark's just helping me with my sobriety. We're friends, that's all it is." She looked so angry, so defensive, like she was trying to convince herself just as much as she was trying to convince me. But I wasn't buying it. I told her straight, "You think I'm stupid. You've been lying to me for months. I saw you in that storage room kissing and messing around with him. Don't bother denying it anymore. I know the truth." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You're overreacting. You're just insecure because you're sober now. Maybe you should focus on your own recovery instead of accusing me of shit I didn't do." Her words stung, but they also confirmed everything I'd suspected. She had no remorse, no shame, just that bitchy attitude that she thought could get her out of anything. I felt my fists clench. All the love I'd had for her, all the hope that maybe she'd come clean, was evaporating fast. I realized I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly, for believing her stories. The pain was sharp, piercing me deep in my chest. I didn't know what I was more angry about, the betrayal itself or the fact that she was trying to gaslight me again. I told her, "You're not fooling anyone anymore. I'm done with your lies." Then I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, fuming, trying to save her own ass. That confrontation was a turning point. I knew I couldn't go back to pretending everything was okay, not after seeing that footage. It was like the final nail in the coffin. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next, whether I could forgive her or if I needed to cut her out of my life completely. But one thing was clear: I was done being played. I had the proof, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The emotional roller coaster was just beginning, and I knew this was only the start of a long, painful fight to get myself out of this mess. The fallout from that night hit me harder than I expected. Confronting Lisa with the footage felt like ripping off a Band-Aid, painful, messy, but necessary. Still, hearing her deny everything and try to turn it around on me made it clear she wasn't about to admit the truth so easily. She kept insisting Mark was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure, that I was just imagining things. But the footage didn't lie. Seeing her in that storage room, kissing and touching him, was proof enough. Yet she acted like I was the one losing my mind. I didn't know how to feel. I was angry, yeah, but also deeply hurt. I'd always believed she was honest, that we had some kind of trust, something I clung to especially after my own struggles with sobriety. Now it was shattered. Part of me wanted to break down and cry, but I held it in. I knew I had to be strong. I didn't want to look weak in front of her, not after everything she'd done. That day, I decided to take a step back. I told her I needed some time to think, to process everything. I packed a bag and left the house, not knowing where I was going, just wanting space. I stayed with a friend for a few days, trying to get my head straight. The emotional weight was unbearable. I kept going over everything: Her lies, her sneering attitude, the way she'd try to brush off my concerns. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark in that storage room, her lips pressed against him, her hands on him. It made me feel sick to my stomach. During those days, I also started talking to some of the support group members I'd been friendly with. It was a strange comfort in a way. They knew about her behavior, and some even knew about her affair. I got advice, some tough love, and a lot of support that I desperately needed. They told me I deserved better, that I shouldn't let her manipulate me anymore. That was hard to hear, especially since I still loved her, even if that love was now soaked in betrayal. But I knew I had to listen. I had to decide whether I was going to fight for this marriage or walk away. Deep down, I also knew I couldn't keep pretending she was innocent. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her sneers, they all confirmed she wasn't remorseful. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt what I saw, what I knew. I realized that if I stayed, I'd always be walking on eggshells, wondering when she'd lie again or betray me once more. I didn't want that toxicity in my life anymore. That's when I made a decision. I'd confront her again, but this time with a plan. I was going to get everything out in the open, all the truths, and then decide what needed to happen next. One of the most intense moments came when I finally sat her down again. I told her I knew about the affair, about the storage room, about everything. Her reaction was a sneer, a defiance that made my blood boil. She told me it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just helping her with her sobriety, that she'd never cheated. But I had the footage, the messages, the witnesses. I laid it all out piece by piece. Her face was a mask of contempt, like she didn't care that she was caught. She kept trying to deny it, to shift blame onto me, saying I was unstable, that I was paranoid because I was sober. That was the moment I realized how deep her manipulation ran. She wasn't just cheating, she was actively trying to destroy what little trust was left. I felt my patience snap. I told her I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I was done. I told her if she wanted to keep lying, that was her choice, because I was finished wasting my time on someone who didn't respect me or our marriage. I could see her trying to come up with some new excuse, some new lie, but I wasn't buying any of it. The truth was staring her in the face. The emotional toll was intense. Every part of me wanted to yell, to scream, to hurt her back, but I didn't. I just told her it was over. I said I was going to think about everything, and I'd decide what to do next. Walking out of that room felt like walking out of my own life. I knew I needed to get clarity, to figure out whether I still had any love left for her, or if I needed to start over without her. The betrayal was too big, the lies too heavy, and as I left I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and dread. I was finally starting to see the truth clearly, and it scared me to think about what that meant for the future. The days that followed were some of the most confusing of my life. I tried to put everything into perspective, but it was hard. Every time I looked at her, I saw that bitchy smirk she always wore when she was trying to manipulate someone. It was like her true colors were finally exposed, and I couldn't unsee it. I kept replaying the footage, her words, her sneers, how she'd lied so effortlessly. Part of me felt broken, crushed under the weight of her betrayal. The other part was furious at her, furious at myself for trusting her so blindly. I started to realize how much I'd been holding on to hope. Hope that she'd admit she was wrong, that she'd break down and tell me the truth. But she didn't. Instead, she doubled down. She kept acting like I was crazy, like I was the problem. She'd throw her bitchy comments, "You're just insecure, you're paranoid, you're overreacting," as if she thought she could gaslight her way out of this mess. I saw through it all. Her lies, her sneers, her fake tears, they meant nothing. She was just trying to cover her ass, to keep her secret hidden. Meanwhile, I was starting to see just how deep her manipulations ran. She was good at pretending, at acting like the victim. She'd tell her friends I was accusing her without cause, that I was crazy because I was sober now. I even overheard her telling her sister how they were just friends, how I was just overreacting. The more I found out, the more I realized she'd been living this double life for months, and I'd been so blind, so naive to believe her lies. I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Not while she was there, constantly lying and sneering at me like I was the crazy one. I decided I needed space, time to think, to breathe, to get clarity. I moved into a friend's place temporarily. The emotional toll was enormous, and I felt like I was walking around with a giant hole in my chest. I kept asking myself how I'd let this happen, how I'd trusted her so blindly. I thought about the good times, the promises we'd made, and it all felt like a sick joke now. Because that bitchy, sneering woman I saw every day was not the woman I fell in love with. While I was trying to pull myself together, I started reaching out to a couple of friends from the support group. They knew about her, about the affair, and they warned me to be careful. Most of them told me I deserved better, that I shouldn't let her manipulate me anymore. Some told me to consider divorce. Others said I might want to try to work it out if she showed genuine remorse. But I wasn't sure what I wanted yet. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in this limbo, in the shadow of her lies. I also started noticing how she'd tried to manipulate the situation, how she'd call or text me, acting like everything was fine, acting like I was the crazy one for blowing things out of proportion. Her tone was bitchy, condescending, like she thought she could guilt me into staying quiet, into forgiving her. But I saw right through it. Her words, her attitude, they all reeked of someone who wasn't sorry at all, just trying to save her own ass. That's when I decided I'd had enough of the passive waiting. I knew I had to confront her again, this time to get real answers, not just to accuse her. I wanted her to finally admit what she'd done, to face the consequences of her actions. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, but I needed her to own up. Because if she didn't, I'd be forced to face the truth that I might need to walk away for good. The emotional pain was suffocating, but I was determined to get clarity, no matter how much it hurt. So one afternoon, I sat her down again. I looked her straight in the eyes and I told her I knew everything. About the storage room, about her lies, about her cheating. Her face scrunched into that fake sneer she always wore, but I could see a flicker of panic in her eyes. She denied everything, of course. Said Mark was just helping her with her sobriety, that I was making things up, that I was crazy. I pulled out the footage again and her composure cracked for a second. She looked angry, cornered, and then she snapped back with more lies, trying to turn the tables, trying to gaslight me into doubt. It was classic her, but I wasn't falling for it. At that moment, I realized I was done trusting her words. I told her I was tired of her lies, tired of her manipulations. That I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, and frankly, I didn't care right. Now I just wanted her to know that I saw her true colors, that I knew she wasn't the person I thought she was. I said I'd be making some decisions soon, and I needed time to think about whether I could stay or if I'd have to leave. She just sat there, silent, seething, her bitchy mask slipping for a second. That was the moment I knew everything had changed forever. There was no going back from this. The days after that final confrontation were a blur. I spent hours packing, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and walk out, never look back. But another part, deep down, still clung to that hope that somehow she might change. That maybe, just maybe, if she truly felt the pain she'd caused, she'd come back and be honest. But every time I looked at her bitchy smirk or heard her dismissive tone, I knew it was all just a facade. She wasn't sorry. She was only sorry she got caught. I made the decision then. I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations, her sneering attitude that made me feel like I was going crazy. I realized that love alone wasn't enough to fix this, and trust, once broken, was almost impossible to repair, especially with someone like her. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I couldn't live with her anymore, not after what she'd done. She yelled, called me all kinds of names, bitch, asshole, insecure, that only confirmed what I'd suspected. She didn't have a shred of remorse. She was only worried about losing her grip, her control, her way of twisting everything to her favor. The worst part, honestly, wasn't even the betrayal. It was realizing how much I'd let myself be manipulated, how I had clung to the hope that she'd change. But now I saw her, this bitchy, lying woman, and I knew I needed to get out before she dragged me further down. I started making arrangements, talked to lawyers, and set a plan in motion. It hurt like hell, but I knew it was the only way to save what was left of myself. I was drowning in pain, anger, and disappointment, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking control of my life again. In the end, she fought. Hard to keep me, throwing fits, crying, begging for forgiveness. But I saw through all that. It was just her way of trying to manipulate me into staying, her usual bitchy act to control the situation. I didn't fall for it. I told her I made my decision and I was done. That I deserved someone who respected me, who valued honesty and loyalty, not a woman who sneered and lied her way through life. I packed my things, left that day, feeling like I was finally free. Looking back, I can honestly say I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild, especially with someone who's willing to lie and cheat without remorse. Never ignore the signs, those little things you dismiss because you want to believe the best, because the truth always finds a way to surface. And when it does, it hits harder than you can imagine. I wish I could say I've moved on completely, but I haven't. I'm still healing. Still trying to put the pieces of my life back together. But I do know one thing, no matter how much it hurts now, I'm better off without her. I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly cares. And if you're reading this, maybe you're going through something similar. My advice: don't ignore the signs. Don't let someone manipulate you into thinking you're crazy. And most importantly, don't stay when someone shows you they don't respect or value you. Because in the end, your happiness and sanity matter more than any lie or bitchy attitude. Trust your gut, stand your ground, and never let anyone take your self-worth away.